Where do we begin? March Madness 2026. I'm William Galloway, joined by Britton Johnson to break down the bracket, discuss all things March Madness, upsets, Cinderellas, what we hope to happen, what we expect to happen, and what we think may be some crazy predictions. Britton, how you doing on this fine March afternoon?
I'm good. I'm trying to get all of my work done in the next day or two so I can enjoy what is probably my favorite week of the year and certainly my favorite weekend of the year. Um, it is such a fun time, and I mean I know from Thursday to Sunday I'm just gonna be glued to my couch.
So I've already put in for vacation day on Friday. I've got other things going on that are actually calling my attention in the morning, not in the afternoon. So you look at this bracket as you were watching the selection show yesterday. What stood out to you in terms, I mean, right off the bat, they go with this gauntlet of an East bracket. And then you wait and you wait and you wait until Alabama's name was called. And for the sixth straight year, Alabama's name was called. So you knew it was on the way, and Texas A&M was waiting around to the 10 seed to get their matchup. Even Houston, who we all thought might be a 1 seed at some point, was one of the last teams to have their name called. So what were some of your initial reactions from Selection Sunday?
I mean, I'll start with this before we get into it. This is kind of a little anecdotal story, but so yesterday I make a habit of like the selection show to me, and I'm sure to you and to many people around America, is appointment TV watching. I mean, it is as much as any big game is like watching the selection show, seeing who makes it. Um, but I had a prior obligation to go to an event for Big Time Ministries. They were celebrating 20 years, and so I sit down to I go over to go to that. I was supposed to end at 5:30, but I fully expected, hey, this will be a shaking hands, in and out thing. And it turned into, and it was awesome. But it was like a real like worship testimony event with, and all my high school kids who I lead a Bible study for were sitting with me. So I'm like singing worship, and I'm like, I can't, I couldn't justify turning on the Direct TV app on my phone. I felt like that would have been in bad form. So I waited until I got back, paused all communications with people. I didn't know who got in, who didn't, and just watched the entire thing afterwards. And the first thought is I thought we got a good draw. That's kind of my first takeaway. Uh, a lot of people around the state have been talking about maybe who didn't make the tournament, and I was really sad to see Sanford miss and some of these other great schools in the state. But I really do think we got a good draw in terms of. I think if you had asked me 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would have said avoid the 4 line and or the 5 line like your life depended on it, because the ones just seemed impenetrable. Like they just kind of seemed so much better than everyone else. And then in the last week or two, they've kind of shown some cracks. And certainly Michigan is a phenomenal team. They've been a great team all year. I think they've only lost 3 games. That's really obviously a hard thing to do. And if you'd asked me back in November or December, or even probably up until about a month ago, I would have said that's probably the best team in college basketball. Not looking at all past our other opponents here, but just when you look at the one, look at who you'd have to go through if you're really going to make a deep run. Um, they've shown a few more cracks. Obviously, they lost yesterday to Purdue, um, but it'd still be a tall task. Texas Tech always a really tough team. They have a great culture there, but they do have a lot of injuries right now, and so when you're looking past and looking at some of these other games, there's a road map to going on a run. Obviously, it would involve Alabama getting really hot, playing their absolute best basketball, um, and obviously they're gonna have to do so. Maybe shorthanded now, we'll see. But I think there's a path there for a guy like Phylon to step up and be the best player in the tournament for a week or two, and all of a sudden you're looking at an Elite Eight appearance.
Well, yeah, Britton, you talk about playing your best basketball, and Friday's performance against Ole Miss, which was probably not that high on the scout. Obviously, you've played Ole Miss, you've seen them, you got their notes and all those things, but that was not Alabama's best basketball. And you do have to tip your hat because Ole Miss hit some crazy shots. I mean, out of their mind shooting percentages, and also just flipping up stuff that was a low percentage shot that went in. So you got to tip your hat on some of those things. But you get worried. You had 6 days to get ready for the SEC tournament, scout multiple teams. You end up playing like that, and now you got another 6 days. And it's one of those things you almost wish Alabama could turn around, fix it 3 days later, and play just like it's a midweek conference game. How do you view that 6 day break? And will playing like that in the SEC tournament possibly pivot Alabama to playing really good basketball with their life on the line, so to speak?
I don't know if this is the answer you're going to be looking for or not, but what I've learned as I've gone through it multiple times is that break. I mean, because like you said, you're in this constant pattern throughout the year of every 3 to 4 days you're playing basketball. And it's just that you don't play every other day. You don't play. It is, you're gonna play Saturday. You're probably gonna play Tuesday or Wednesday, and that's how it is for about 2 to 3 months. And then you get to March, and all of a sudden you have depending on how good of a conference slate you had for Alabama, they had what would it be, a 6 day break in between their last regular season game and when they played Ole Miss. And now they have a full week in between when they played Ole Miss and when they'll play Hofstra. Um, what I've learned is it is just an unbelievable reset. And so I don't know that it has any bearing. And that I think can be a great thing a lot of times. I mean, you look at 2 years ago, Florida absolutely dog walked Alabama in the conference tournament in their first game. And obviously Alabama was able to flush it and go on a Final Four run. And then conversely, you'll see sometimes you'll hear people say, "Oh, this team got too hot. They were too hot going into the tournament." I think it's less that and more, you know, it's just a complete reset. You're kind of back to 0-0, and the momentum when there's a week in between games, it's kind of hard to keep that momentum one way or another. And it's really easy. I mean, it sounds obvious to say it, but it's really easy to get guys up to play these games. And so if you're frustrated or down about, hey, we lost in the SEC tournament earlier than we wanted to, it's really easy to flush that and say we're 0-0, and our legacy hasn't been defined yet. Our story hadn't been written yet, and we have a chance to do things that have either rarely been done or never been done in this school's history over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And so I don't think it'll be hard for everyone to lock in on that. It's just kind of fun to see who's gonna be playing their best basketball next week and how the reset works for this team. Because I think, like you said, the Ole Miss game was really frustrating for the reason of you have almost a week to get healthier. Obviously, the team's been banged up all year, and Ole Miss played great, but it definitely wasn't Alabama's best game. Had some really rough offensive stretches, and so you kind of hope this is a great week to get some skill work in, get everybody back in the gym, and kind of build their confidence up.
Well, and to play well, you have to practice well. So I'll get back to the bracket, but I do want to ask you, amidst all the distractions and the travel, and we know they're going to have travel issues this year, what does the week between SEC tournament and then NCAA tournament look like in general? And let's go back, almost 5, 10 years ago for you now. Let's exclude the pandemic tournament because that was an abnormality. So when you have that time in between playing in Nashville and then going to the NCAA tournament, how hard do you want to go in practice? Because even teams like Texas A&M, Alabama talked about not playing hard enough. Nate was mentioning that in his press conference. And so how hard do you want to go? What do those practices look like? And then it is a quick turnaround relatively because you have a couple days prior to travel and get to your location.
Yeah, I mean, I think you treat the front end of that week like any other week. I mean, I think you go really hard, but then you're kind of mindful in the back half of not just, hey, we got to play a game and be fully rested, but also if we win that within 48 hours, we're going to play another game. And it's not so much that you are preparing to play two games as if you're like looking past the first, but it's just the reality of if you do win, you're going to play again 2 days later, and that's a quick turnaround. And so I think for us, it was you still go live a good bit because you want guys to be really sharp with that stuff. Um, but it's a lot of skill work. It's a lot of shooting. At this point in the year, I'm not going to say you are who you are. Like I think teams certainly ascend and play their best basketball in March, but you've drilled everything about as much as you can. And so you get live reps just to see reps. But I think a lot of it's skill work, shooting, building up confidence, getting guys to get a good feel just for each other. I mean, at this point, you're 32 games in if you're Alabama. These guys know how to play with each other. And so the reps are really just to keep everybody competitively going. I remember, ironically, the bubble year, one thing I will say is you are a little more mindful of guys' injuries and guys' health than maybe you are in November or December. Um, so we're preparing to play, I think it was before the Sweet 16 game, a couple of days before. And I'm an idiot. And sometimes I am so hard headed about just like playing hard or trying to do things the right way that I'm not mindful of like, oh shoot, I'm a walk on that's not going to play. And in 2 days, we're playing a really, really big basketball game. And so we're doing a transition drill, and I jumped to take a charge on Herb. And I didn't undercut him, but it was one of those where it's just a hard charge. He kind of comes down a little harder. He was fine, but I get pulled to the side, and Charlie Henry just goes, hey, you don't need to do that anymore this year. You're good on charges for the rest of the season. We know you'll take them, but look, you've already built up uh, that reputation. It's not like you're having to fight for that. Like, we need our guys healthy. And so there's a little bit more mindfulness about that kind of stuff. But I think
You're trying
in
to get your
general,
last minute blue collar points. That's all it was.
I look, I was trying not to get dunked on or give up a wide open layup, and so that's the only thing I could think to do. But yeah, so it's just kind of you have to be a little bit more mindful of that. But for the most part, it's pretty normal practice. You don't want to switch up things so much that it kind of throws off everyone's routine because you want guys. Yes, it's a big deal to play in the NCAA tournament, but you want people approaching it like it's any other game to some level.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get back to the bracket here. I've got it set as my Zoom green screen background and kind of want to get to some storylines, some high points, some Alabama connections, people all over. Obviously, you look at South Florida and that entire staff up and down. You get to talk about Kennesaw State winning the Conference USA tournament. And how about not only did those former Alabama coaches in Hodgson and Petway win, but they won it in the state of Alabama in Huntsville and Birmingham, respectively. So super cool there. But just, I mean, at first glance, Britton, I'm looking at teams like Santa Clara, Kentucky, right? I want Santa Clara to go in and take down a Kentucky team who's struggled all year long. You got the Alabama Hofstra, Aaron Estrada connection. How cool would it be to see a team like Penn go after Illinois? And I don't know about you, but as I pick my bracket, I am so much more rooting for the Cinderella. And then come Thursday at lunchtime, my bracket is out on the street. I don't even care. I'm rooting for the lower seed, unless I've got that personal investment in that program. Like I'm rooting for the upset. And I think we all are in a sense. Obviously, the Siennas of the world more than likely aren't going to beat Duke, but you've seen such crazy things happen in this tournament. So, what are some storylines as you look at some matchups and some things that you're excited about in terms of maybe some potential upsets and some seedings that were released less than 48 hours ago, 24 hours ago, really?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I told you, I haven't even spent enough time going through the whole bracket yet. I think what you're seeing with the NIL era, and I hope by the end of the week I'm proven very wrong on this, is that the difference in how these guys are paid and how the mid majors have to handle player retention because of the transfer portal and NIL is so different that these top 3 and 4 seeds I feel like just have a much bigger advantage. Like the 4-13 matchup 5 years ago is, I mean, it wouldn't be shocking if 2-13s won that game. It just like it wouldn't. Um, Now I think this is one of the first years that all 4 seeds are a double-digit favorite over all 13 seeds, and so the gap's widened a little bit. So the first round upset, I'm not saying Cinderella's dead. There will be a couple of great teams, but for me, the matchups that I get really, really excited about are those that are going to take place potentially down the line. And kind of, I love a Cinderella. I also like the concept. The older I've gotten of the NCAA tournament in some way, shape, or form, actually proving to put out the best champion that we can. And so for long term games, sometimes I'm like, I prefer that these 4 seeds are able to win a couple games. I'd love to see Arizona play Arkansas. Darius Acuff go against who I think is the best team in the country right now in Arizona. I mean, you look at Duke's bracket, and it's like they have Kansas St. John's potential second round matchup could be incredible, and just so many storylines there. I think if you were to pick an upset, I actually USF. I mean, Hodgson has those guys playing at a really high level right now. Louisville's a
When
good
if
team,
it's
but they're
official that
gettable.
he's taken over Syracuse, you're looking at a matchup between he and Pat Kelsey that is just going to be, a gauntlet in the future in the
Hmm.
ACC.
Yeah, and the game's also being played in Buffalo, and that's a storyline that's kind of been brought up a decent bit. But Brian's from there, and so that's where he calls home, and so I think it's to be a meaningful game there. The one thing I do look at more, not so much in deciding who's going to win a game, but in just seeing maybe this is a predictive thing on how a team's going to play, is where the game is being played. The farther teams travel, I know I saw Calipari kind of complaining about this a little bit that they're
He
having
always
to,
complains about travel, though. I mean, let's be real.
yeah, but I don't know how all of it works. But I don't necessarily blame him when he's like, we could be playing in Oklahoma City, we're playing in Portland. That's a really big difference. But you see that that's like it is a factor that not enough people consider because when they were watching the games, they're just like, oh, I'm just flipping channel to channel, and I don't even really pay attention to where the games are being played.
Right.
But I think that is kind of a good thing where it's like, okay, I'm kind of in on the upset, and the favorite team has to travel 1,000 miles or a couple thousand miles to from their campus to where the game's being played. And so I do like that. I'm trying to look at other matchups. Do you have any that stick out to you that are first round or second round, just
Well,
good
on that
upsets?
note, I mean, we talk about A&M from time to time, talking about Bucky. College Station's a 45-minute flight from Oklahoma City. St. Mary's, obviously not nearly as close as College Station is, and A&M's a higher seed. But lest we forget, Auburn as a 9 seed had an upset and then played in Birmingham, and Houston drew Auburn in Birmingham. It was basically a backyard home game for Auburn in 2023. So we've seen stuff like this happen. But I want to point out not necessarily a matchup, but kind of some notes and trends that you were talking about. Doing a little research from the past couple years bracket since 2023, the Final Four average team seed ranking, if you will, has dwindled. In 2023, the average Final Four team was seeded at 5.75. 2024, that went down to 4.25. Last year, they were all 1 seed, so it was chalk mostly on the way to the Final Four with a few upsets mixed in there. And on the note of upsets, 32 first round games, there were 7 upsets in 2025. There were 7 upsets in 2024. So I'm looking to see, is that number going to be higher, lower, or the same? And from what you talk about in terms of when you factor in NIL and some of these teams and how they're double digit favorites as a 3 or a 4 seed, you're going to see some of these programs just you're going to see the dwindling of upsets potentially, but that's what this tournament is built on. And that doesn't mean, these lesser teams or these lower ranked teams are lesser than as an institution. And so I'm excited to root for the Cinderella, to root for the underdog. But you talk about South Florida, and I do like that. And I really like the future matchup more so of Hodgson versus Kelsey. So I think that's going to be a fun one. We talk about the East. If you've listened to any podcast, everybody's talking about the East, talking about the coaches, the hypothetical matchups with all of those great programs and historic programs, many of whom have played in multiple Final Fours and won multiple national championships. Looking over at the West, I like NC State, Texas. I love that as a play-in game, and I think if I'm rooting for an upset, I'm rooting for them to upset BYU, the winner of that game, just for the sake of Will Wade or the sake of Texas kind of squeaking their way in, so to speak. Purdue's playing really good basketball. Missouri is probably much better on a good night than a 10 seed. So playing Miami, I think that's a great matchup for Missouri. You never know. And like I said, I'm looking at my bracket on the screen. You're looking at it up and down here. I will be locked in for all, what are we, 67 games over the next 3 weeks. I'm fired up.
Yeah, it'll be great. And like, I think again, I'm looking at some of these games and I'm like, past the 6-11, I'm not saying there won't be, by Thursday, I will convince myself into 3 to 5, 12 through 16 seeds getting a win. But it seems less of an appeal than maybe in previous years where I like had my 3 or 4 teams I'm just riding with, even maybe to the Sweet 16. Like, we're talking about upsets. We're almost talking about 7, 10 games, which I'm like, that to me, that's not even an upset. Like,
Yeah.
I don't view the A&M St. Mary's game as, one team being even like a higher seed type team. It's like they're on pretty equal footing. I'm sure A&M's not too bummed uh, to be getting a 10 and not a 9 and having to maybe play a 1, even though Houston's obviously a really tough out, regardless of, when you
If
play
they were
them.
put in the South, they'd be getting
But
Florida in that second round.
yeah, I think for me, a couple more that I'm looking forward to as maybe future matchups is we talked about A&M Houston in Oklahoma City. A&M and Houston are an hour apart. I'm sure their fans are right next door to each other, and you're not having to travel far. That'll be a packed out game. if A&M's able to beat St. Mary's and if Houston's able to take care of the Vandals. Um, and then I think for me, maybe a Vandy Florida rematch in the Sweet 16. I mean, if you watch that game, it didn't seem fluky. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that if they played again that Vandy would beat them by 20 again. I think it wasn't Florida's best day. Um, but Florida has made the SEC look like a mid-major league throughout the year with how they've beaten these teams, Alabama included. And they get to the end of conference play and they kind of started to look human a little bit. And um, they certainly looked human against Vandy. And I think Vandy, when their guard play is going the way it was this past week, is very, very dangerous. Tyler Tanner's a stud. Duke Miles is great. Tyler Nichols, an absolute sniper. They have a guy named Chandler Bing. That's cool. Dude's never seen
Friend
Friends.
of many.
Yeah, he's never seen Friends, and his name's Chandler Bing. So there's definitely gonna be some fun storylines. You say you were for the upsets. I'm not here to disagree with that because I do love an upset, especially the first round. Like you absolutely love it. I love a good Sweet 16 and end though, and sometimes these really big upsets can hurt the tournament long term if we're really trying to produce the best champion that we can. Not saying I want chalk. I
Yeah.
love kind of mixing and matching, but um, it's like I Long Island beating Arizona would be incredible, incredible. However, Arizona might be the best team in the country, and it'd be a bummer to see them lose.
Hold on. Fins
You
up.
know, however, the Ice T game will be an incredible matchup, and I'm looking forward to Arizona versus Long Island.
Hey, how about St. Louis, Georgia, right? One of those, you get Michigan, so good luck. But Georgia, when they're playing their best, is better than an eight seed. St. Louis, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I mean, they could come out and make some noise. They obviously wanted to be in last year. And so, how much are they holding out? Have they held out to put on a show in this game and put up something against an SEC team, one of 10 SEC teams, by the way, 10 across leading all conferences? The 8
I thought
9
11
is
were supposed to get in.
do what?
I thought 11 were supposed to get in. Did you tell me that there was an 11th team from the state of Alabama?
Oh, Britton, that's a great question. I know you've been busy in law school
I
and
wasn't able to watch the selection show live.
no,
Remember
no,
that?
and I know you were doing quite literally the Lord's work. No, there was yeah, the last four, Miami of Ohio, SMU, they
Hmm.
play that game I think is either Tuesday or Wednesday. Texas and NC State. Yeah, those were the last four. So, only 10 SEC this year.
So, not the team from West Georgia, not Auburn.
West Georgia did
Um,
not make it.
no, I actually kind of felt bad for Oklahoma. Like on a real note, I didn't think
Well,
I thought the
here's
committee.
the thing. They lost a lot of close games. If you want to be a
Yeah,
championship team and compete for a championship, you've got to win those close games. And you can't let, and I'm not saying you're doing this, I'm not trying to do it either, but the emotions of a late run. I think about Texas A&M 2021, 22 under Buzz
hmm,
Williams. They made that run from Wednesday to Sunday in the SEC
yep,
tournament, and they said, "We deserve it." Well, you lost all your games in February or whatever it
yep.
was.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't think there were any travesties by the committee. I know Miami of Ohio was a big talking point for people, and um, truthfully, I don't know that they belonged in. However, when you have 68 teams that make it and 37 or however many at large, and a team goes 31 and 0, the committee's going to be inclined to put that team in to reward regular season success, no matter who you're playing. But it's always tough for me when I'm seeing not even just SEC teams, but really good teams having across the conferences having to play 10 plus quad one games and a team that played zero quad one and three quad two getting in. I'm not bummed about it, but I think certainly if one of those results were different, any one of them, I think that they would have been out. And I think the committee would be the first to say that. So, but yeah, truthfully, this is one where I think the committee did their job. There weren't any real travesties. I know we were kind of joking about Auburn and Oklahoma, and I don't think Auburn's a bad team. They had big wins, but they just could never really put together enough solid outcomes in a row. And like you said, Oklahoma started 1-7 in conference play. Now a few of those were, I mean,
Yeah,
Missouri had to be
razor
hit
thin
two different
margins.
buzzer beaters to beat them. And so really, I think Porter Moser showed it more than anything how good of a freaking coach he is that he was able to turn it because it's so easy when you're 1-7 and everything's gone against you to just pack it
And
in.
pack it in.
But no, I think that was a big takeaway for me. Is just like I would have loved to have seen them included because I thought they were better than their record showed. I think that they showed it in the back half of conference play, but there were no travesties by any stretch.
So we talked about this before, and I think it was on our last podcast, or maybe it was one of those videos I've done by myself, but mentioning how long will Lamont Paris stick around? Well, they're going to reinvest in men's basketball in Columbia, South Carolina, and get the Gamecocks trying back to the NCAA tournament level and not be last in the league. Oklahoma and Porter Moser obviously turned it around. I'm not too sure we won't see Matt McMahon not back in Baton Rouge because there's been some noise around Will Wade. Again, all hypothetical speaking there. But one question for you, Britton, is do you expect any turnover in the SEC? Probably would only be LSU if hypothetically that comes to be. And then two, where do you see Alabama exiting, if at all, this year? Obviously, lots of questions as we record this on Monday, with some scenarios going on with Alabama off the court.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when it comes to turnover, we're in a really interesting time when it comes to universities and coaches and just like their retention because of the NIL situation and because the transfer portal set up. Because there are a lot of schools normally that, hey, this coach has had three straight losing seasons in league play. He's not showing improvement, so to speak. So we should can him. That would be the traditional way of thinking. And now it's, are we investing enough to even give us a shot? And for a lot of these schools, the answer is no. There's not enough investment to, you're investing like a 3-win SEC team. You're not investing like a 10-win SEC team, and you can't really complain that your team's performing up to that standard until you're willing to invest a little bit more. And so that's just kind of the reality that we're in. Now, I
And
think,
that can be a hard read too when you have two Texas schools with a first year coach, Auburn with a first year coach coming off a
mhm,
Final Four run. So your basis of how you record those metrics aren't necessarily accurate of what's going to be from year to year.
no doubt, no doubt. But I think when you're looking at because the traditional timeline is 3 or 4 years, maybe five, and if it's not working, it's not working. And so, like you said, I don't know that situation at LSU. I'm not going to be a predictor of things. I wouldn't be shocked to see them let him go. But again, I don't even know the NIL situation around them, so they might be getting next to no funding, and then they sit down. I think that's what Oklahoma did recently. Obviously, Oklahoma went on a run, so it's a little bit different, but their AD literally put out a message and said, "Look, we got a championship level coach. He is a stud coach. He's been to a Final Four. We are not investing in him enough. We are not investing right now enough in the program, and we're going to start doing better about that because we can't be putting him on a hot seat when he's we think a great coach, and we aren't giving the resources that he needs. And then when it comes to Alabama, like you said, there's a lot we don't know right now. I think Michigan would be a really, really tough team to beat. If I was an odds maker, I probably would favor Michigan in that basketball game. Their front court's phenomenal, and we would really struggle against that. But I got a little too much Bama in me. I think we got a ceiling run of like this is not a national title team in Alabama unless they flip a switch that they have not flipped all year. I'm not saying that's outside the realm of possibility, but I see them as a ceiling Elite Eight Final Four team, getting past a couple of big upsets. And so I do like their matchup against Texas Tech just based on the personnel right now. And so we'll see how it shakes out, but should be a fun couple of weeks regardless.
We're hopeful, and maybe Aaron Estrada will be in attendance on Friday in Tampa. Anyways, Britton, thank you for your time. We will wrap this up here, and you've got to save the world. Class coming up here in a few minutes for you, but hey, it's going to be a great March Madness, and roll tide, my friend. Talk soon.
No doubt. Roll Tide.